Hey folks, it's the Red, and today for Mario Day, we're going to be making a tier list featuring every power-up in the Mario series. And joining me for this list, I'm bringing along Squeaky and Madole.
It's your boy.
So, this is covering every single one in the series, huh?
All the ones that are going to make you transform at least. So we're not going to be including things like the Goomba shoe, or the coin block, or that ice skate from 3D World.
Okay, so you got the hammer suit, the frog suit, and the Tanuki suit on here, but Karibo's shoe gets left out. Alright, I see how it is. You're just jealous because you know that Karibo's shoe would be an instant SSS.
The shoe got the boot.
How dare you make that pun?
Alright, so we've got a lot of power-ups we need to get to, so let's get right into it, starting with the classic Super Mario Bros. Power-ups that have been in pretty much every game afterwards. Beginning with the Super Mushroom. It makes you bigger, it lets you break blocks, it lets you take a hit. An overall pretty good power-up, but usually nothing more than a stepping stone towards something better. And personally, I think this would be a pretty fitting one for B tier.
I mean, it's pretty iconic. I don't know, I'd go higher than B. After all, whenever you're, like low on health, what do you want to get? You want to get that mushroom. It's pretty important. So I'd say at least an A.
I would say the mushroom power is pretty basic, but there are a few little things that I like how it includes in the later games, such as being able to do like a spin jump and drill on down to like blocks that's like underneath you. But other than that, it is still like a stepping stone to give you like a free extra hit. But it's also like the most basic power-up ever, so B tier for me.
Basic though it may be though, like I said, whenever you're low on health, whenever you're in small form, what's there for you? It's a mushroom!
Fair enough, but given that there are a lot better options out there, I feel like B is the better option here. And since we do have you outvoted here, 2 Bs to 1 A, I think we're going to balance it out to B. So next up we have the Fire Flower. You collect this, and then you can shoot fireballs. Also underwater for some reason. A very good item, very useful to have, and I think this one would be good for A tier.
I would say the Fire Flower is quite good as well. It's like gives you sometimes an extra hit depending on if you're playing like one of the later games or like an early game, it's just like another double hit. But other than that, I do like how the projectiles work. It always shoots out and diagonally downwards, and it's like moves real fast to the next enemy altogether. So it's go around A tier for me.
I mean, do y'all really need to ask? Fire flower? Burning things? Setting my enemies alight through a wall of flame? Yes,
You're putting
please.
this in.
That's an obvious S tier. Burn everything. Burn it to the ground. The S is for the sizzling of your enemies.
But the A's do outvote the S's, so A tier it is.
You're wrong!
Next up, we have the Superstar, formerly known as the Starman. You collect this and you become invincible for anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, depending on the game.
So many different types of Starman, they just kind of change it up to being Superstar instead of sharing it with like 5 other characters.
So the Starman is a very fun item to use, but it's often given to you in controlled environments and doesn't really have the ability to help you out in a particularly difficult spot. Like, you'll only ever get to use it at the beginning of a level or somewhere in the middle just to run through a crowd of enemies that's in front of you. So it is a pretty fun item to use, but because of its limited accessibility, I could only really put it in A tier.
The invulnerability is fun. It's good for like beginner players if you want to like just speed run through the entire game, but with the limitary things altogether, I actually would put this in B tier.
I would actually probably agree with Madole here. I mean, it's invincibility, it's like, woo, okay. But not only is it typically very limited, but a lot of times they'll present it in a situation where you either are obligated to use it for some reason or another, or they'll place it in a situation where it's designed just to give you an extra life, in which case, okay, it's more interactive, but you could have just used a 1-up mushroom. So I'm going to say that's probably a B tier as well. Plus, I mean, there's some exceptions, but the Starman is generally not necessarily that exciting to use and requires very little effort on the player's part. Just run into everything.
With 2 Bs and an A, we're going to give this one to the B tier. And that concludes our Mario 1 power-ups, moving on to Mario 3 with its marquee item, the Super Leaf. So, in Mario 3, you collect the Super Leaf, you sprout ears and a tail. The tail can be used to attack enemies. You can wag it to slowly descend, making platforming easier, and with enough running speed, you can fly through the air for a short time. Very fun, very useful. I would almost want to put this in the S tier, but I feel like an A might be more appropriate.
How dare you?
Honestly, I would put this into the S tier. It's like one of my favorite power-ups in Mario Bros. 3, and I kind of always like to have like a ringtail and ears all the time.
Absolutely. This is 100% S tier material. I am fully with you, Madole. Absolutely iconic. Incredibly cool design. I mean, it lets you fly. It just absolutely define a generation.
Well, I don't need much convincing for that, so S tier it goes to the top. Alright, next up, it's the frog suit. Mario becomes a frog, and swimming becomes a lot easier. So very good for underwater levels, but on land, not so much. And because of its limited usefulness, I'm inclined to say this should go in the C tier.
Honestly, it's actually a little bit more fun for like a gameplay mechanic. Or if you want to have it more challenging platforming stuff, you could use the frog suit. And you could also use it for like a special Easter egg at the end. Whenever you complete a fortress, the king will recognize you as a frog instead of a human.
That was always a fun touch.
I would put this in A tier for the challenge altogether.
I would probably put this in A as well, just because this was always one of my favorite suits. One of. Well, really all the suits in 3 are amazing, but I always like this suit a lot, just because, I don't know, man, I like frogs. What do you want from me?
I like the design of it as well. It's very simple, and it just works.
It's a silly frog suit. He's a froge. Jump in the water, go splish splash.
These are all very good points, but since we seem to be quite spread out on our views here, I suggest that we meet in the middle and put it in B tier.
Acceptable.
Next up, we have the Tanuki suit. It has all the functionality of the Super Leaf, but you can also turn into a statue, and enemies walk right by you.
S tier.
It's basically the same power-up, so I would put this in S tier along with the Super Leaf.
I mean, if we're putting the Super Leaf in S tier, then we might as well put this in there too, just above it.
I mean, let's be real. It's the Super Leaf, but cuter.
No arguments there. Okay, so next up we have the Hammer suit, which lets you become the thing that you hate the most, the Hammer Brothers, and gives you the ability to fling hammers at your enemies. Surprisingly able to take out just about everything in this game, including thwomps and boos. Very fun, very useful, though a little unwieldy to use, and also a little rare to come by. I would put this in A tier, personally.
Honestly, when I've ever first encountered the Hammer Bros suit, that is like one of my favorite suits to wear all the time. It looks powerful, and whenever you crouch down, you turn into a little buzzy beetle shell, and any fire projectiles will just not hit you at all. So, for the rarity of this item, I would actually put in S tier.
I never actually made the connection that he looks like a buzzy beetle when he ducks, but yeah, he does.
Yep, absolutely. This is, again, probably the best power-up in the game. As Madole already stated, gives you complete invulnerability to fire-based attacks. You could throw hammers, and contrary to what you suggested, I actually think they're quite easy to aim. You can throw them far if you run before you throw them. I mean, you got a lot of different options you can use to toss them. Plus, they take out thwomps, they take out boos, and just make short work of everything. Honestly, it's a little bit overpowered, which is probably the reason why they're so rare, but if this is an instant S tier.
Well, sounds like the S's have it, so up you go. Time for the P-Wing. So we have all the functionality of the Super Leaf, except now you have infinite flying ability. You can essentially skip an entire level with this. This is basically what the Lakitu Cloud does, except you have to actually play the level instead of just skipping it outright. They're rare, kind of. Not as rare as the Hammer suit, but, they exist. I don't know. I'm really not sure how to feel about this one. So I'm going to hear from Squeaky and Madole before I put down my opinion.
For me, I would have liked it if only the dash run would stop beeping all the time. Like you're at max speed all the time, and then you have to hear that ringing noise throughout the whole level until you get hit.
Oh yeah, that gets annoying.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put that one down to C tier, actually.
I would actually probably say the same, C tier. Not only because of the annoying beeping, but I mean, it's a little bit better than the cloud because at least it does count as clearing the stage. There were very few stages that I used a P-Wing on because, like, it always felt cheap, and I didn't like it.
I'm kind of gonna agree with the C tier here, so we're gonna stick it right in there.
Unanimous.
All right, time for Super Mario Land and the only new power-up introduced there, the Super Ball Flower. You pick up this flower, and then you can shoot what you think are going to be fireballs, but then you fire the ball and it flies off into the sky. That's because it bounces against the walls and can ricochet and hit enemies in all different directions. Or you can miss your target entirely and wait for it to go off screen. Other than for a few moments in some secret rooms where you can use it to collect coins, I don't feel like this power-up is ever fully realized in its potential, and for that reason I kind of want to put this in C tier, because it's like the fireballs, but not as useful.
Super Ball could be a little bit tricky altogether. I know there has been a couple of times whenever I'm in one of those bonus coins rooms and I use the Super Ball to collect the coins. For some reason, it sometimes ricochet off the coins and then it collects other coins underneath it.
I think that just speaks to the general lack of polish in Super Mario Land.
I honestly don't recall that ever happening, but I wouldn't be surprised, because, yeah, like you said, Super Mario Land had some rough spots.
In any case, I would put this under C tier due to its glitchy behavior.
I'm actually kind of surprised both of you put them on C tier. I would consider this a B tier item. Sure, it's got some quirkiness, but, I mean, whenever you compare it to everything else available in Super Mario Land, this is kind of your only real weapon against a lot of the enemies, especially the ones that are a little bit more particular about how you can deal with them. I mean, just looking at the spiders in one of the underground areas, you can use a Super Ball, bounce it up, and you don't have to worry about trying to dodge them as you jump. You can just take them out right then and there before you even get to them. So I would say this definitely is a B tier worthy item, but it sounds like you guys are both on C, so that would put it at C tier just for majority.
Alright, so moving on to Super Mario World's power-ups, we have the Caped Feather. You equip this thing, and on the surface it seems very similar to the Super Leaf. You can use it to float down and make platforming easier, but you can also fly very quickly, and then you can use it to stay in the air by wiggling the controller up and down to keep your character up in the air, possibly all the way to the end of the level. This, I think, is a very easy S tier.
Well, I do appreciate like the capability and stuff that Mario has. There is another feature that I do like about it, and is that whenever you're high up in the air, you could also land really hard, and I'm pretty certain it will hit any nearby enemies as the earth shakes on the ground. I also like the fact that you could spin around with the cake for a long time.
Oh yeah, I really like spinning.
So I would say this is a good benefit, so S tier.
I mean, there's just not really a whole lot that could be said that wasn't already said. This is an obvious S tier. I will say that one thing that even though this does give you the potential to be able to skip levels like the P-Wing, the difference here is that skipping levels with the Cape Feather actually requires you to have some degree of finesse in controlling it. Not to mention there's some levels that have obstacles in the way that you simply cannot surpass and will have to land in order to get around. Because of that extra effort required if you did want to skip the level, I think that this still offsets the kind of cheapness of it because you have to actually know what you're doing.
Okay, so sounds like we're pretty unanimous on the S tier, and honestly we'll put it right there in the front. And next up we have the P-Balloon. Mario gets this, inflates into a balloon, and can float in the air for several seconds. It's a thing. You go kind of slow with it. I don't really have much to say about this one, other than C tier.
The balloon itself, it's not very memorable altogether in this game. There's like only a few levels that you use it fun, but other than that, it's not really much to talk about. Unless you're in that Star Road secret area.
Oh
gnarly,
god,
I
don't
believe.
remind me of that.
Oh, I just remembered that one.
Tubular.
8 levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw that level. No.
Yeah.
Like.
Honestly, this would be a D tier for me.
Yeah, I'd have to probably go with D tier as well. C if I'm feeling generous, but probably D. Not only is this not very well utilized, but also like, ooh, balloon, off I go. Oh, I ran out, I dropped. Overall, pretty meh. It's definitely, no, put it in D.
Okay, next up, it's the Super Carrot, the only new power-up introduced in Super Mario Land 2. Mario gets bunny ears, and then he can use them to slowly, and I do mean slowly, float to the ground. So it's very similar to the Super Leaf or the Cape Feather, but you can keep yourself in the air for upwards of 20 seconds using this thing. You can also jump slightly higher with it without having to hold the up arrow to do so. It's pretty neat. I think I would put it in A tier.
I actually do like the carrot power-up more than the Tanuki Leak, surprisingly. Mostly because whenever you climb up those like little slime, whatever they were called, like slime waters or something.
It's just slime, yeah.
Okay. So whenever you climb up those slime things, as regular Mario, you have to keep pressing the jump button, but with the Rabbit Leaf, you could actually hold the button and you just slowly ascend up to the air. So I actually would put it up in S tier around there.
I would actually probably put this one in B. I could go as high as A, perhaps, because I do like it a lot. But I don't know, man. It doesn't have, it's a purely maneuverability based power up. There's no extra usage to it to help you fight enemies or anything. It just lets you fall a little bit more slowly. It does dramatically cheapen a lot of the bosses because you could basically just bounce, hover in the air, wait for the invincibility to run out, bounce, hover in the air, wait for it to run out, bounce, boss done.
Okay, so Madole said S, I said A, Squeaky says B. Let's meet in the middle and put it in A. Moving on to our Mario 64 power-ups, we've got the Wing Cap. So the way this works, after you perform a triple jump, you can fly in the air until you touch the ground. As far as I can tell, there's no way to make yourself ascend with it. So I do think this one is a little trickier to use than, say, the Cape Feather, but it is still pretty fun to utilize. Personally, not really my favorite power-up, though. I'm probably going to put this in B.
Technically speaking, the way how the flight modes works is that you have to use like the inverted controls where you have to hold down to go higher whenever you're about to land. Think about like a little bit more of like a wave you have to deal with it. But other than that, another gimmick that it has is that when you hold the jump button down, Mario will slowly descend, but making any high damage requiring fall damage altogether obsolete. So I would actually put this down in A tier.
Okay, well, unfortunately not that it will make too much of a difference since the middle vote would pull it down to A regardless. I would say this is an S tier power-up. This functions a lot like the Cape power-up, because in order to climb higher, you just have to time your intervals of, pulling back with tilting forward. Depending on how you time it, you can dive and pull back to where you'll gain a little bit more lift ahead of where you were originally. And if you do this consistently, you can actually gain altitude with it. However, there's not really too many opportunities for you to do that. The only one I can immediately think of offhand being the secret up by Rainbow Ride, where you have to collect the red coins scattered around the clouds. And even then, that does have boundaries that if you go too far out, you will bump into a wall and fall. So that's an S, an A, and a B, so that would average out to A.
Correct. Next up, we have the Metal Cap. Very similar to the Superstar, this basically makes you completely invincible. It also lets you walk on the bottom of the water. It doesn't drain your air. And it also takes away Mario's ability to smell, so he can walk through gaseous areas as well.
It doesn't take away your ability to smell. What?
I like to think that it does.
I actually love the metal suit altogether. Mostly because you're, super invincible and I love the metallic footprints that Mario makes all the time throughout the adventure, and the music that plays into it is very boppin'.
I was gonna say I do like the invincibility remix that goes with this.
So I would actually put this in S tier for me.
I do like this one a lot, but I feel like S might be a little too generous, so A tier for me.
I mean, honestly, if you're going to look at the 3 power-ups that were added in Super Mario 64, and the wing cap does not go in S, the metal cap is definitely going in S. Because, I mean, again, invincible, but not in a cheap way. The ability to go underwater, not to mention that the fact they actually utilized it, and utilized it in conjunction with other caps, like in Dire Docks, where you have to have both the Vanish and metal cap. Really clever, really cool.
Okay, sounds like the S's have it. Next up, we have the Vanish Cap. You put this on, and your opacity is reduced by 50%, and then you can walk through gated walls. And as far as I'm aware, that's really the only thing it's useful for. Yeah, very situational. Probably gonna wind up in C tier.
Yeah, pretty much whatever Red said is basically what I thought about it too, but I would actually move it down to like C tier altogether.
I definitely don't think it deserves a C tier. I could agree with B tier on this one. It has its uses. Again, I like the use of combination with other caps to double up as opposed to it being its own exclusive thing. If you had to use it at the expense of other caps, it definitely would be on the lower end because there's nothing you can really do. Yeah, you can move through some obstacles. Yeah, you're translucent. Enemies don't see you. Whoop-de-doo. But the fact that you can combine it with other stuff, I think, improves its versatility. So I'd say B tier. You know, that actually kind of brings up another point, how underutilized the Vanish Cap was. It really only showed up in a handful of areas. Big Boo's Haunt being specifically one of the more, really the level for it.
So,
I mean, to really put that in perspective, in the area where you're first introduced to it, you're sliding down a hill. Like, you're not even using the power-up for its ability.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's go ahead and drop it down to C.
So C is the consensus then. And now we're going to have ourselves a bit of a weird one, the Power Flower from Super Mario 64 DS, and this ability changes depending on who picks it up. In the case of Yoshi, he gets the ability to breathe fire, and with Mario, he gets the P-Balloon ability, where he can float around in the air. Wario gets the Metal Cap ability, and Luigi becomes transparent. So, how do we rank this one?
So, let's be real with this. It basically just replaces the Metal Cap and the Vanish Cap. So those already are just their own things. Let's not tie that to the Power Flower, but it's the Metal Cap and the Vanish Cap. The P-Balloon already sucks. We've established that. It's our only D rank. Frankly, Yoshi gets to breathe fire. Are we gonna question burning things? I think not. S tier. I'm joking. Probably C tier for me.
The Yoshi one, that one is kind of like the weakest of the transformations out of them all. Because Yoshi could spit more like fire out of it altogether, but it's not very beneficial for getting stars. So that would go down to like C tier for Yoshi though.
I'm kind of in agreement that C tier seems like the best place for this. This power-up is basically just there to fill in for what should already be there. And yeah, we'll just stick it right in there and move on, shall we? Moving on to the new Super Mario Bros. Power-ups, we have the marquee item, the Mega Mushroom. You become a giant and can bulldoze everything in your path. Very similar to the P-Wing, you could basically use this to skip entire sections of levels. Not just the level outright, of course, but is also functionally similar to the Superstar, because nothing can hurt you. But the thing that gives the Mega Mushroom an edge is that you can also get them in certain mushroom houses and take them with you to any point of a level, and possibly even beat bosses with it. So it can trivialize certain sections of the game. As far as how I'm going to rank it, I'll probably going to put it in C, because that's also where we have the P-Wing, maybe just below that.
I do recall, seeing the early footage of E3 and when they introduced the Mega Mushroom, Mario just basically got to the end and then just stomped on Bowser. I found that kind of funny though. But in game though, They did have a little challenge to begin with where you have to fill up a gauge in order to get 1-up mushrooms out of it, but it doesn't really utilize it that much since you could just play it for fun all around. And I'm pretty sure if you ground pound, you could also get like items falling from the sky as well. But all in all, just like an easier, cheap way of beating the levels, so C tier.
I would actually give this one a B tier, if only for the reason that they included certain elements of stage design where you had to use it carefully, because you could take out everything in front of you, yeah, but you could also take out warp pipes. So if you're not careful, you can actually lock yourself out of being able to get some of the star coins in the area. And I thought that was a nice touch. Also, the fact that instead of like sliding down the flagpole, you just kick it out of the way, it was funny.
So C's are outranking the B, so there we go. Next up, we have the mini mushroom. Can we even really call this a power-up?
I mean, it's the antithesis of the mega mushroom, so I would say so.
Basically, you pick this thing up, you become micro-sized, and can fit into small gaps that even small Mario couldn't fit inside. You also get the ability to float in the air whenever you jump, and in some games you slide down walls slower.
But you're forgetting one of the most useful aspects of it. It also lets you run on water because you're so small that your density doesn't break the water tension.
Yeah, that's true. Although I don't feel like the game really makes the most use out of that other than in some secret rooms to get a star coin.
So the mini mushroom is actually both challenging to get to the end with, but it's also fun to see Mario float around. I do know that in the game that there are a couple of bosses where you have to defeat him as Mini Mario just to unlock other worlds to get all together. So for that challenge there, I would actually put it in A tier.
I do appreciate the challenge that comes with this, but personally I think I'm going to put this in B.
I'm surprised I'm the harshest here. I would have put it in C tier. It's novel. It has its purpose. I see where they were going with it. Like I said, with the polar opposite of the Mega Mushroom. But overall, it's in most cases a power down rather than a power up, and that takes off marks. There's also the fact that it is underutilized, and because you are so small, you can't even defeat a Goomba without ground pounding it because you don't have enough weight behind it. And while that's a nice touch, it also just kind of goes to show how crappy the state of the power-up is.
So we have an A, B, and a C, so we'll meet in the middle and go in B. Next up, we have ourselves the blue shell. You get the ability to become a Koopa. And when you run, you spin around in the shell and can break against bricks that are against wall or take out enemies in your path, just like if you kicked a Koopa shell into them. You can also duck inside your shell for protection, similar to the hammer suit. As fun as it is to go through levels while spinning around in the shell, and while you do have more control over it than a Koopa in the fact that you can jump, it does get to be a little bit unwieldy once you get to your top speed, once you bounce against a wall, and then you have to come out of your shell and get back up to running speed. But overall, it is a very good power-up, and I think I would put this in A tier.
I actually do enjoy the blue shell altogether. Mostly the fact that there are a few puzzles in order to get star coins by just spinning around and hitting the blocks as the shell. I just like to have like the different perspective of seeing like the shell spin around and hit all the enemies. So I would put this in A tier as well.
I'd say A tier. It's fun to bounce around with the Koopa shell. I like the puzzles that make use of it. Like there's puzzles like this in Super Mario Bros. 3, for example, where you kick a Koopa shell and it has to bounce down through like little paths of blocks where some of them are solid and they get a coin and other ones break. Whenever they introduced this power-up, there was a handful of those kind of puzzles, but now you were the shell that was there bouncing through them. And for some reason, that always amused me a lot. I thought it was cool being the one that was in control directly.
Pretty unanimous on the A ranks there, so there it goes. All right, now we've got a number of power-ups from Super Mario Galaxy. We're going to start with the Fire Flower. I believe this one pretty much operates just like it does normally, except it has a time limit this time, and can also be used to melt icy structures. It's fine for what it is. I certainly appreciated seeing it come back after so many years. I think I would put this variant of it in B tier, though.
Honestly, the Fire Flower in this game feels a little bit underutilized compared to its icy counterpart. So I actually am gonna drop it down to C tier. Mostly the fact that in order to shoot fires this time around, you just have to like spin the remote instead of pushing a button. They gotta get used to those motion controls, baby.
I mean, it's still an A tier power up to me. The Fire Flower is always great. I liked how they utilized it in a few more puzzles. Used it in particularly, I don't remember the exact galaxy, but it's one where you land on a beach and you have to use it to light torches. In any case, it's a Fire Flower. It's a classic. It's good to see it back, so I'd say it stays A tier.
So
averages the B.
We're meeting in the middle in a B. Okay, next up, the Bee Shroom. Mario becomes a bee, can fly around for a short time, and he can climb on honey surfaces.
He also climbs on Honey Queen as well. Let's just point that out too.
Let's not.
Is it necessary? Do we have to bring this up? What we should bring up is why do we have to have so many power-ups that do basically the same thing? We already have the cape. We already have the raccoon suit. We already have the Tanuki suit. We already have the wing cap. Like, why do we need another one?
Kind of the bunny ears.
Yeah, bunny ears too. Why do we need another one? Stop wearing so many hats to have the same thing. You don't even get to sting things. Why you gotta be a bee when you can't sting?
Because he'll die
I'm
afterwards.
about to say, don't point out the fact that it's wasps that sting, because if a bee stings, then it kills itself.
Anyway, the bee suit is kind of a cute power-up. It kind of feels a little bit slow to fly around, and even if the basic jump doesn't feel as high as normal. So this is gonna be taking points off of it, so it's gonna go down to B tier for me.
I think I forgot to say my letter, but yeah, I'm gonna say B as well.
I'd probably say C, but B would be the majority, and I could agree with that overall. It's just
Because it's a bee!
B for B!
it's just why? Why do we need another one? And it just irks me. I don't know, man.
Alright, moving on now to the Rainbow Star, which has essentially the same effect as a superstar. You're invincible for a short time. But now you're a rainbow! Yeah, I guess we'll put it in the same place as the superstar, B tier.
Yeah, pretty much. There's not really much to talk about other than whenever you hit an enemy, a lot of star bits drop out. B tier for me.
I mean, it's a Starman. That's all there is to it. It's a Starman by another name. Whoop-de-doo. Put it in B.
Okay, B it is. Moving on now, we have the Ice Flower.
So the ice power is actually, whenever you shake the remote, you'll be able to start skating on icy surfaces. You'll be able to have access to walk on water to it, and you actually create icy platforms to make an ice field around it.
This thing is actually a lot more useful than the Fire Flower in this, because there's just so much more you can do with it.
Unfortunately, yeah, the Fire Flower compared to the Ice Flower is actually pretty woefully underutilized. With this, not only can well, for one thing, you don't slip and slide around. You're actually the one causing others to slip and slide around. You're able to skate freely over any kind of watery surface. You're able to create platforms with it. And, like, just the whole skating animation and control feels pretty good and responsive. It's got a nice aesthetic to it. And, I mean, unfortunately, it kind of makes the Fire Flower look crappy by comparison. It's a better Fire Flower.
Yeah, with that, I would say this one goes to an S tier for me.
I'd say A tier, just by comparing it to the Fire Flower in Galaxy at the same. Still doesn't be an actual Fire Flower.
It is pretty good, but I'm skeptical to go to S, so I'm going to agree to A tier. I did find it a lot of fun skating around with it, so up we go. All right, next up we have the Boo Shroom. This lets you become a boo, and you can go through certain walls and fly around. Is there anything else I'm forgetting about it, though? I feel like it should be able to do more than that.
You can scare the hell out of Luigi with it.
Oh yeah, that's always fun.
There is also a little silly gimmick about the Boo Shroom as well, is that when you're near a Boo, they just fall in love with you and just follow you around all the time. I kind of find that ridiculous.
It's the stash.
But in any ways, I actually really like the Boo Shroom because it's not like a costume that Mario's wearing. You actually become the Boo. I want to see more transformations like that where you become like an enemy or something like that. But due to the limitedness of how many levels you use it on, it's gonna go to A tier for me.
As a power-up, it's kind of underwhelming, but I'll just be real. I love the Boo Shroom. It's just cute. It's silly. It's funny. It just got that wacky charm. I'd put it in A. I'll be straight though. It's absolutely biased because I just like it.
I would personally put it in B. I thought it was fine for what it was, so the A's have it. Up you go. And now we have the Spring Shroom. Mario winds up in a spring and can bounce around extra high. This thing is a little hard to control, I find. And that makes it a little unwieldy because you're constantly pushing forward while you have this thing equipped. And I don't really enjoy using it all that much. I think I'm going to put this in D tier.
Even Mario in the artwork there looks like he's in a panic that he's in the spring outfit.
What happened? Why am I here? What's going on?
Anyway, the spring power-up, like, it is hard to control around, but sometimes you have to take it slow now and then just to make sure you get the jumps just right. But the way how Mario does jump and you get that perfect bounce all the time is kind of fun, but it's not really all that noticeable since it's only in like 1 or 2 levels.
It feels like this power-up is designed to make a level more challenging, because in many cases, you would probably have an easier time just going on foot.
Yeah, but in any case, this will go down to D tier for me.
Really? Both of you say D tier. I actually really like this power-up. It's definitely underutilized, that's for sure. But I really enjoy this because whenever I first encountered this power-up, it immediately made me think of Wario Land.
Oh, because of the
spring. Yeah! I love this.
Purpose.
And because of that, I didn't really find it to be that hard to use at all. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I would say this was a B tier at the lowest, but it definitely needed to be used a lot more. There's probably more stuff that it could have been used. I definitely think there's opportunities for other mechanics involving the spring aside from just the bouncing, like using the stretchiness, using the fact that it's a coil which can be used to conduct electricity, although the fact that Mario's in the middle of it probably isn't that great of an idea. But I feel like they could have done more with it, which is a bit of a shame, but I did enjoy the levels that were in it, and as far as it making them a little bit trickier, yeah, it probably was implemented purely to make the levels just a little bit more challenging, but I think it worked out for it. I liked how they added to the levels.
Okay, so with 2 Ds and a B, there we go then. Alright, now we have the Red Star. This basically gives Mario the ability to fly freely. It's basically like the wing cap, except it gives you more vertical control. It's got its moments, it only really appears a few times in the game though, so not really gonna find much use for it outside of exploring the Comet Observatory more easily, but I think it's fine. I will put it in A rank.
I, on the other hand, was kind of underappreciated once we got all the green stars and then all of a sudden Red Star power-up appeared and be like, oh, hey, you got a new power-up. Collect all the purple coins. Now you unlock it only in the hub map. It's like, can I use it in other worlds? No, hub map. So, yeah, with that kind of a sad prize all around, I'm just going to put this down to D tier, because you don't really use it that much other than just one mission, and that's it.
Oof, that's quite a gap there. I like the power-up a lot, but I do agree with Madole in that it's like, oh hey, you got this cool new power-up. You don't get to use it though. Fly around, have fun, but only here. I like the power-up, I like how it controls, I like how it works, but they really should have used it more. It even has kind of a neat color scheme for the outfit, but they didn't do anything with it. For that reason alone, I'd say it gets an A for being like fun and cool to use, but it gets a C for how it's not actually utilized very well. So I'd say B. If they used it for more things, I would be more inclined to give it a higher rank.
Okay, so our rankings being kind of all over the place here, I'm inclined to say that the balanced place to put this is at the top of C tier, just above the P-Wing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.